Welcome back to the Bookends YouTube channel. If you've been following along, you know we have been interviewing some of the agents here, and I am interviewing Jessica today, which comes with a lot of pressure. A lot of pressure. We were
I'm
just
just
talking
along for
about
the
how hard
ride
it was.
today.
What?
I'm just along for the ride today.
I know, and I don't like that. Okay, so let's talk about you a little bit, just to make you uncomfortable, because that's fun, and usually it's the other way around. So, you are the president and founder of Bookends. We have been operating going on 26 years. We celebrated 25 last year, which is a huge milestone. I know we did a couple videos on that. But in addition to running the agency, you are a literary agent representing best-selling and award-winning authors, a mentor, a teacher, and so much more. So we want to introduce you, I think, a little more thoroughly to the channel. Everybody knows you for all of the wisdom you dispel on the channel, but I think there's so much more to you as a publishing professional and a person. I think everybody should get the opportunity to get to know. So we're gonna start with like the very obligatory you run an agency questions, and we'll get to some fun stuff too.
So awkward. Go on.
It's so awkward. I think we work better together than we do interviewing each other. Was that a horrible opening?
No, it was a great opening. I just hate being talked about. I hate when it happens at conferences. It's awkward.
Get over it.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, well, I won't talk about you anymore. You can talk about yourself. So we talked about on the channel, we've done a lot of videos about how you come to start Bookends, like the whole origin story of you leaving being an editor, starting this two-person company, right? But the past 10 years in particular have been pretty huge and like a huge boom in growth. So
Yeah.
can you talk about that a little bit? Like, what was the starting point for the agency changing so much in the past 10 years, and what has guided you through all of these changes?
I mean, I I I guess I can say part of me doesn't know, but also it's money. I'm going to be really honest. I think that we'd reached the point where I needed to build the agency financially to be able to do what I wanted to offer as an agency. The money needed to be there, and I knew that, my agents were great, but we could do so much more. And a lot of it, not entirely by accident. You know this. I don't know if everybody knows this, but I can be a little bit like you put it out into the universe and the things will happen. And I think making yourself open to those things are what makes change happen. And the minute I sort of changed my mindset that I wanted to do bigger things and I could do bigger things. And, when I first started the agency in 99, I looked at very specifically agencies like Writer's House and Distal Goderich Borat, I think now it is. It was at the time just the Distal agency. And those were really agencies that, from the outside looking in, I had a lot of respect for and also really wanted to be. Um, but if you want to be something, you have to do it. And it was really easy for me to get scared by what growth would mean. Bigger accounting systems, having actual payroll, hiring people, and being responsible for making sure they could get paid on a weekly basis because they weren't working on commission, things like that. Um, but when I put it out there that I wanted to grow and, I wanted to expand what we were doing, suddenly the right people started showing up in my inbox.
So when you say you wanted to grow and expand and offer things, did you mean for your agents or for clients or for the industry in general?
Uh,
Or
I
all
think
three?
initially it was that I wanted bookends to have more offerings. At the time, we were pretty much a mystery, romance, some nonfiction agency. And I grew up in publishing, working for the editors of Ace Science Fiction Fantasy. So even though I didn't do science fiction or much fantasy in my own list, I always just felt like as a the agency I wanted to be well-rounded, I wanted that.
Yeah.
Even though I never had anything to do with children's books. Um, I wanted that. I wanted that full, well-rounded agency. So that's what I wanted the agency to be. So that's where I sort of started that expansion was bringing in the people who were able to do that because I'm pretty good at knowing where I'm pretty good and knowing where I'm not, and not trying to pretend that I could do science fiction, for example, or children's books when I couldn't. So, what I always say is hiring people is about hiring people who are smarter than you. So I need people who are smarter than me in those areas.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Okay, so we talk about all of the successes from the past 10 years, but success does not happen in a vacuum, right? Like it happens with the flip side of the coin, failure. And I think that's particularly in publishing, it's an industry where we have to be very comfortable with failure.
Really,
Um,
really comfortable.
yeah, so what any you want to share about what failures you have come up against in running the business and also like how you handle it too?
Sometimes well and sometimes not well. Um, I'm I'm pretty good at carrying the failures and not trying to blame others, but sometimes I also maybe do that too much. Luckily, we've never had anything astronomical. Um, but I've been very lucky to have hired incredibly good people. Um, but I think like anything else, you're taking chances and you're not always going to hit the jackpot every single time. I think writers can compare themselves to books they're writing, where one book can be really great and the next one is a struggle, and maybe you're never going to finish that next one because it's not
Right.
working. I have a lot of ideas that we try to implement, and some of them are fantastic,
Can
and some of
confirm.
and some of them are like, reel that one back. That one is not working at all. Um, but I learned from those failures. I've become better at I become much better at the hiring process, at really trusting my gut, I think is the biggest thing. I would say all the time, my biggest failure is when I listened to voices other than my own and didn't trust my gut and didn't make those decisions. Um, it's easier for me to think as an agent on failures when I let fear drive me, where, maybe I didn't take a chance on a new client because I didn't think I was good enough. But I think even the same would hold true. I guess one of the things that I'm currently sort of remedying is I think one of the ways I failed sometimes is hiring people part-time because I've been afraid to make the investment to full-time. And then I put people in a situation that was sort of unsustainable for them, the workload and those kinds of things. And that's something that I have had to remedy a number of times. So things like that are ways I've failed. And like I said, systems we maybe tried and implemented and did not work. And sometimes it's that it was just a terrible idea,
Yeah.
and sometimes the idea wasn't big enough to sustain where we were, or we grew so fast out of that idea that it had to be redone immediately.
Yeah, I think, well, I don't know how much people know this, but I have been involved in a lot of the changes over the course of the agency just because most of them started around the time that I started as an assistant. So
Yeah.
I was the one helping you implement all those things. And I think that is what I want to say, like, you have become so good at, and I think taught me to become good at, is the pivot of like, okay, that was a bad idea, and now we're gonna try it this way. And it's constant, like it's not, and not in an exhausting way. It's just like,
Good to know.
yeah,
Other people might
I mean,
disagree.
sometimes, sometimes I'm like, whoa, no, but I think most of the time, and I think this is a good lesson for writers too, like, especially if you're writing a book and you hit that wall, like we were trying it this way and it just didn't work. And that went for everything from how we ran social media, how we ran accounting systems, everything, like who was doing what within the agency, subrights, how we submit books, everything. And I think that's what makes the agency so strong too, is like we're not locked into anything at
No.
all.
In fact, we just a year or so ago, 2 years ago, a year ago, we used to have a weekly meeting, and it
Yeah.
just had gotten flat, like
Yeah.
really like zero involvement in the weekly meeting. Like everybody, it was just like the same like thing. And so I just canceled it. I shut the whole thing down. I canceled it. Then I sort of shifted. I was like, let's do monthly. Let's just do once a month as a check. And now we're back to the weekly. but rethinking how we do it. So it's a constant, everything's a moving part
Yeah.
for me. And I'm always willing to have somebody say, this is a disaster. Can we rethink it? But yeah, I've had a lot of failures. But learning from those failures about what works and being willing to say, terrible idea, let's try something different, I think is what's helped me. And it's become easier the more time has gone on, the more I've done this to be able to back out of something quickly.
Yeah, it was a muscle, I think, like growing the muscle, and now we can kind of see, and you especially can see when something's not working almost before it stops working too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so then what has been the most, and I think in all of Bookends history, but maybe in the last few years, what has been the most rewarding success for you?
The success of my agents, to be honest. I mean, I am thrilled. It's super exciting every time, an author hits the New York Times list, especially when they hit over and over and over again. Like there's always new milestones to hit. But for me, my bigger goal is that everybody who commits themselves to be an agent at Bookends, listen, you're all working on commission, which means that you're only going to get paid if you're selling the books and doing the work. And I feel very responsible for the fact that you're making that commitment to Bookends to give this a try. And I feel very responsible to all of you to make it work for you. And, I say this over and over within the company that my goal is that every single person who works here as an agent doesn't just make money, but is able to live not just a livable wage, but like to really live the lives you want.
Yeah.
And whether that's like giant yacht trips or, to own a fancier bike. Whatever your dreams are, that's great. But the fact that so many here are seeing those dreams come true and that are not just living on what they're earning, but actually living big lives
Yeah.
is, like if I were to retire tomorrow, I'm not, but if I
Not
were,
yet, actually.
that, I think at the end of the day is what I will always be most proud of and what I'm continuing to work to make happen for everybody.
Yeah. I actually think that's a good segue because you wear so many hats in the agency. I think you just kind of showed one about mentorship and like almost like life coach sometimes, but then
Something
you're also being a business leader, running the day-to-day organizations, and then being an agent as well. So how do you balance that? Because there are multiple full-time jobs.
you hire good people.
Hire good people.
The
And
key
when are you
is
gonna do that?
always. The key is that, there was a time when it was, you know, two of us, and I would do all of the banking and signing all of the checks to all the authors and the mailing of the checks while also submitting all of my clients and things like that. But as we've grown, I have to be willing to trust other people to fully do those jobs for me. And it's great. I love doing that, but so I have to be able to. So now there is an entire banking team, the finance team that, I oversee, but I don't do the hands-on work anymore.
Yeah.
I used to be the one person doing all the media. I wrote the blog posts, I posted the blog posts, I read the comments, I created more blog posts based on the comments. I got back to the comments. I ran the Instagram account. I started the Instagram account. I ran like I was doing all of those. And now, as we have discussed, when it comes to the YouTube channel, we are talent. Other people, other people are the ones making sure it gets posted, making sure we stay on schedule, making sure things are getting done. Um, I don't know what else I did, but I have Marie, who's incredible, who, makes sure my calendar is set, organizes all of that, makes sure the agenda for the meetings, all of that is done. So, the key to being able to do it is knowing, again, I sort of said this earlier, where my superpowers are, where I am most useful within the company, and then stepping back and trusting other people to do the jobs I can hire them to do that I don't need to be doing anymore.
Yeah. Okay, so then how do you like do you find that there's a clear divide or do you kind of just
With
flexibly go
my
back into
jobs, you mean
yeah.
with, first of all, I hire somebody to do the jobs I stop liking.
Right.
So the very first step is when it becomes no longer joyful for me, it's time to hire somebody to do that.
Well, it works. It's true.
But it's not my best, it's not where I'm best. You know, where I am truly best is sort of being the visionary and the idea person, and then going from there. Um, I don't see my role as a divide. Like I don't come
Yeah.
into work and today I'm an agent and tomorrow, I run the company. I think it's all sort of fluid depending on what's happening in the day to day, what needs to be done, and who needs what from me.
Yeah.
So, I could have a day where we have a couple in-house meetings at bookends. Maybe a couple agents want to run things by me, talk things over, and maybe I'm not working on my client work that day. But then maybe the next day, everybody at bookends is content, everything's moving slowly, and I can focus all my energies on my clients.
Yeah.
It's sort of like work-life balance. There's no such thing. It's just, getting it all done as best you can.
Yeah, and it's all under the same roof too. So that definitely makes it easier. Like you're
Yeah.
not kind of physically having to shift through these jobs either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so 2025, which if you're watching this in 2025 is this year, but you set a big goal to like dive back into agenting because for the last 10 years there have been so many changes. You
Hmm.
have been more, I would say, more primarily focused on building the company than
Hmm.
building your list. But
Yep.
this year, because you've built all these wonderful systems and teams, you were able to dive back in a pretty like inspiring and exciting way for a lot of us here. So what are you representing for these days and what are you looking for?
I have taken on a ton of books in sort of what I'm calling the cozy romantasy area. I'm not the dark romantasy person. What I tend to say is if it leans heavily fantasy, it's probably not for me.
Yeah,
If it leans more romance or mystery with a speculative or a fantasy element, so it can be a whole world, a whole fantasy world, but it definitely reads more like a romance or a mystery, then that's my area.
yeah, very
So
accessible.
I love anything magic. I always have. I love subtle magic, like, the magical baker who can taste tears. I love, back in the first iteration of sort of the paranormal romance many, many years ago, I did a lot of vampire books, a lot of fun fantasy paranormal romances. I did a lot of witchy mysteries. And so for me, it's been really fun to return to that.
Yeah.
I still really love suspense and thrillers. Um, and my sort of sweet spot really has always been the high concept. If you can pitch me your book in 2 sentences and it sounds really like that sounds fascinating, then I'm definitely that person. Um, and I like upmarket writing, but I tend to be more genre
Yeah.
leaning than I am literary leaning.
So what qualities are you looking for in a client?
I love an idea person. I work really well with somebody who can come to me with a list of like 10 amazing ideas and we just get to pick what they're going to write. Um, I want, you know, what am I looking for in a client? I want somebody who really wants to work with a team. I'm very team oriented. I'm very team oriented when it comes to bookends. I am the same as an agent. Some of my favorite editors are those who truly loop me into the conversation. They
Yeah.
don't just CC me, but they'll have a conversation with the editor and then they'll say, Jessica, what are your thoughts on this? They want that third person in there. And I think the authors who I love working with the most, but also who are the most successful, are looking to build their career, always looking for fresh ideas, always willing to pivot because it is so much of this business that you need to be willing to adjust. but also looking for the expertise of others. They want their publisher because they're tired of being, the person who has to think of everything. You want to work with those cover designers and those artists who are truly, really brilliant. And if you let them, will come up with an idea you never saw coming, but will take your breath away. They want an editor who's going to dig in there and really make them work. A good editor is not taking the book that we sold and putting it through. They're going to make you sweat a little and they're going to make you do things that you don't want to do. And, I think for an author, I want somebody who's also willing to hear the things that you don't want to hear, to have those hard conversations, because I need to be able to say to an author, listen, I can't sell this. You can't revise this to a place where I can sell this. We need to really have a hard conversation about what's not working with your writing, and you need to make a shift. And if you don't want to hear that, if you just want to hear how great your book is, then I'm not going to be the agent for you. It's a
Yeah.
partnership. If you want to work at BookEnds, you're going to have to hear how things aren't working.
It seems to be the through line.
Listen, it
Jessica
works.
will spot the flaws in a plan and then we'll share them.
Yes, people at BookEnds will send their plans, their goals. They'll be all excited, really proud, and ready to go. And
Oh, that is my least favorite part. Like especially like when goal season comes around, you're like, all right, let's start goals for the next year. And I'm like, I got this. And I write my goals down and I send it over and I'm smug and I'm like, this is great. I nailed that this year. And then I get like a wall of text where it's like, did you think about this? And maybe this and that was wrong. And you're really limiting yourself. I'm like, no, I should have never sent it. I should have waited until January. That's one thing you're very good at. You're very good at the push, the kick off the cliff.
yeah, what I'm not good at is a lot of hand holding.
No, yeah,
And I
no.
am not, no, and I
Which
am,
is good. Which is good.
it's just, it's who I am. I try, I will try to tell you what's working, but I'm not going to sit there and tell you, like, I'm not the every kid gets a trophy person. I'm going to be like, yeah, you didn't do good today. It's fine.
Yeah.
Everybody does, like, we all have bad days.
Yeah. But to your credit, I think that you do balance it really well. Like
Well, that's good.
you will acknowledge the good stuff, the successes, the hard work. You will acknowledge the stuff that matters. You won't like keep patting someone on the back, which I
No.
think is good.
That doesn't do any good. Like, I don't want to be told that what I'm doing is great, and then 5 years later, I'm in the exact same spot. And I'm sitting there thinking, why didn't anybody tell me I should have been doing X?
Yeah,
And I think that's where, I think that's where we fail, each other, but also we fail our authors. Like, if we
well,
just
your
tell an
favorite
author, you just keep doing what you're doing, and the whole market is shifting, and nobody called the author and said, you can't keep doing this. This is like a good agent will be able to say to the author, I'm pretty sure that you need to start thinking in a new direction because I don't know that we're going to be able to get another contract based on the numbers that we're seeing.
yeah.
So let's start thinking about that now rather than later when you've written that next book and I can't sell it.
Yeah, and your favorite quote, which I now hear in the back of my head all the time, is clear as kind, which is true.
Clear
I
as
think,
mud, Brene Brown.
yeah, and I think that's on all levels of your job, our job,
Yeah.
agenting, running a business, being clear.
Hard truths.
Yeah,
But I want to hear them too. I think I try to be open them too. You all have come to me and said, hey, what you said today didn't work for me, or this, or I've had authors say, I don't like your feedback, or, I will do my best
yeah,
to listen to that. But I think, I would rather somebody very clearly say, this isn't working for me, than to be posting it on X when I didn't know about it.
for sure. Yeah. Okay. Work aside, just as a person, what do you do outside of work? How do you spend your time? What lights you back up after like a particularly tiring, exhausting day of publishing?
So many things. As you know, I love reality TV.
Yep. It's like TED Talk level at least once a week.
So
I have
not
no idea
only,
who these people are.
but you have to listen to it.
I do.
Not only, I have been a Bravo junkie since the first Real Housewives of Orange County.
Which I have to say is like to me one of the most shocking things every
Nobody, I
time.
know everybody's shocked by that when I say
Yeah.
that. Love it.
Especially because you're all about no bullshit, and then you like spend your time consuming all of the bullshit.
All of the bullshit. But not only do I watch all the shows, but then my favorite podcast duo, Watch What Crappens. Shout out Ben and Ronnie. I love you. And so I have to watch the shows and then I have to listen to Ben and Ronnie replay the impersonation of the show afterwards.
So basically a third full-time job.
So great. I love reality TV. It really like, and everybody mocks me for it, and I do not care. But if I find out, if I confess and somebody says I love reality TV, I will sit for hours
Yeah,
and
it's
talk to you
impressive.
about it. But anyway,
The well does not run dry at all.
I think it's the I think I was a psychology minor, and I always think that I could have been a psychologist. And I think it's just a fascination I have for human behavior. And even like, and I know so much of reality TV now is contrived, but yet these people went on the show. So there's a certain behavior that makes them want to be public about their lives in this way that's fascinating to
Okay,
me.
but don't you also think that it's a skill that very helpfully helps you navigate publishing a little bit?
Yeah, I think it helps navigate the world
I
because
think the reality show of publishing, I think it's good to
yes.
have that overlap because you can really, efficiently navigate publishing if you know how to navigate reality TV.
True. It's true. And honestly, I could never be a housewife because part of their job is just turning nothing into drama. And I just don't care that much.
Yeah.
I just don't care that much. But for other people who care, I just really think like that's wild.
Yeah.
So
No,
yeah,
it
I do love reality TV. I also am a huge PWHL, which is the Professional Women's Hockey League fan. Go Frost, two-time Walter Cup champions. I cry every time. I just think women being able to play professional hockey is, you know, if I were 10 years old right now, that would be my dream. I'd be working my butt off to be doing that.
yeah.
So huge hockey fan, but all PWHL, which actually then just gonna do a short MSWL pitch. I want a sapphic hockey romance so bad.
Yeah. Well, that was my next question.
Just putting that out there.
Yeah.
I have a lot of other little hobbies I do, but yeah,
So then,
I like to be outside. I
yeah,
like to
you're an
do stuff.
outdoors
You
person.
know, and everybody who follows my Instagram knows I got Olive. That's my little buddy.
She
So
requires some long walks.
she requires a lot.
All right, relax. So what kind of books do you love reading just for you? No market trends, no submissions, just pure
I read
readership.
all over the board.
Yeah.
I love suspense. I've been on sort of a romance women's fiction kick. I have been doing all the speculative books. I love anything speculative even when I'm reading. I do a fair number of biographies on audio. Will never represent one, but
Right.
memoirs and biographies I like on audio. I do a lot of business books, self-help books, not as much as I used to. I guess I'm in pretty good shape these days. Um, um, So I'm all over the board, depending on honestly, it's mood based.
Yeah. If you could manifest one, because you love to manifest
I
things,
do love to
if you can
manifest.
manifest like the perfect book in your inbox tomorrow, what would
Oh,
it be?
oh, it would just have to be one.
Well, no. We make the rules here. This is our
I
channel.
think it would have to be speculative, and I don't know how deep you want to go. Like it could be a family of witches. It could be just a hint of magic. It could be a whole new world where, it's a whole world of paranormal creatures, anything like that. I think it has to have a strong family and friendship element. Maybe one or the other, like it could be friends as family, but I do love those strong connections in in my books. Um, I'm just going to describe a bunch of elements because I don't know if there is one book
Go
because
for
then
it.
I
Put it
would
out
write
there.
it and I cannot write. I do love sort of the, which we've mentioned before, is like the great natural element kind of book, like, you know, Lost in the Wilderness, or I have a thing for natural disasters. A little aside, I'm from the Midwest and my parents' home was destroyed by a tornado many years ago. Everybody was fine, the house was not. And I think that just left a huge mark on me. I think I was always fascinated by natural disasters, but when you sort of survived one in that way, I would be a storm chaser. I would be I would be a psychologist and a storm chaser.
Yeah, that tracks.
Does. I would love to do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so it would be a lot of different things. And then it could be anything. Like, one of the cool things about an MSWL is somebody can describe something. Like I could describe, I want a book about being lost in the wilderness. And depending on what you write, it could be a romance, it could be a thriller, it could be the wilderness of another planet, it could be anything depending on where you want to take it, which is where I think MSWLs could be really cool writing prompts for authors.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
for sure. Okay. We're gonna close it out with a quick rapid fire this or that Layla and I came
oh,
up
this
with.
or that.
Yeah, Layla and I came up with them. They're all bookish related.
Oh, okay.
And I thought it was a fun way to close it out after talking about failure and okay.
We're
Coffee or
talking about
tea?
what a failure you are. Go.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Mornings or nights?
Mornings.
Salty or sweet?
Ooh. Well, honestly, both
Both.
together would be preferred. But I think I'd lean salty, actually. Although
When
I
I
do
wrote that, I was like, she's gonna say both.
there we go.
Yeah. Paperback or hardback?
If it's a paperback, it has to be trade. I don't care either way,
Oh, I
actually.
have strong opinions on that. So I'm
I
sure.
do not. I do not.
Wow.
But I do not like mass market anymore. I haven't read a mass market in years, which
Well, bad news for mass market.
yeah, I'm not alone on that, I'm afraid. And I don't read, and I do audio, but I do not do ebooks.
Yeah, you will not pick up an ebook.
I used to, but then I made that work. And so I really just like, and I also think like something about an e-reader makes me interruptible, but
Yeah,
something
very.
about a book, like I'm reading, go away.
Yeah, there's something about also too like being on a device and then switching. Like it's easier to switch from a device to another device.
And I actually really like to look at the covers. Like I'll like stop in the middle of the book and just look at the cover, or I like to sometimes flip, even though I've read them. I usually read acknowledgments first, and then I read them again last, and then sometimes in the middle I have to go read them. And you can't flip around in
Yeah,
an ebook that way.
you're right. And also, I like to feel a little bit better than everybody else when I'm reading a book and they're scrolling.
Plus, it smells good.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, books are just,
Um,
it's a vibe.
it is. It's a whole experience. It's
Yeah, yeah. And
somebody
I
should
need that.
tell that. Yeah.
I'm very into hygge, so like a book with the smell and the vibe and my big chair and my blanket, and I have a big enough chair so Olive can join me, of course. And then like, my drink by my side, depending, coffee, water, or martini, depending on the time of day. So,
Depending on the time.
yeah, yeah.
Books to make you cry or laugh.
Um, Depends on my mood. I've been more into laughing lately than crying. That's
Well,
why I had a really hard time with Sunrise on the Reaping. It took me forever to get through like the last 5 chapters because I was so afraid and I didn't want to cry.
yeah, it was tough.
Yeah.
Single or multi POV?
I think I lean towards multi, but I don't think about it.
Hmm, fair.
Just read it.
Plot driven or character driven?
Plot.
Slow burns or fast paced?
I tend to go fast paced. I like to burn through a book.
There you go. That also kind of helps with MSWL. So
Yeah. Yeah.
you're welcome, authors.
Yeah. Thank you, James.
Yeah. Okay, well, I hope everybody enjoyed this video, getting to know Jessica a little bit better, especially all of the advice that we give on the channel. I think it's nice to know who the hell we are. So don't
We
forget,
already did James's, so go check that out.
no, don't. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here next week.
Bye.